The image that may come to define this World Cup is not a superstar lifting a trophy or a football giant dismantling another opponent. Instead, it is a scene that nobody expected to witness. On one side of the pitch stands one of football's most respected minds, a coach whose reputation has been built across decades at the highest level of the game. He sits motionless as the final minutes tick away, watching events unfold in disbelief. On the other side, a group of players from a tiny island nation celebrate every tackle, every clearance, and every hard-earned moment as if their lives depend on it. The nation they represent is so small that many viewers would struggle to locate it on a map. Its population is barely 500,000 people. Yet somehow, against all logic and expectation, they are taking points from teams that have spent generations ruling world football, and that image captures the greatest irony of this tournament because FIFA never expected this to happen. When FIFA expanded the World Cup from 32 teams to 48, the official explanation was simple. Football was becoming more global. More nations deserved a chance to compete on the biggest stage. New dreams would be created, new stories would emerge, and countries that had never before reached a World Cup would finally get their opportunity. It sounded noble, but critics saw another motivation. More teams meant more matches. More matches meant more television revenue, more sponsorship deals, more ticket sales, and ultimately more money flowing into FIFA's accounts. The expanded format created a tournament with 104 games instead of 64. It was a business decision wrapped in the language of inclusion, and behind closed doors, there was likely an assumption that the football hierarchy would remain unchanged. The smaller nations would arrive, enjoy their moment in the spotlight, suffer predictable defeats, and quietly exit the competition. The traditional powers would advance deep into the tournament, delivering the blockbuster matchups that attract global audiences and massive commercial value. That was the plan. Then the Underdogs showed up and refused to follow the script. One of the biggest stories belongs to Cape Verde, known as the Blue Sharks. For the first time in their history, they qualified for a World Cup. Their opening match could hardly have been more intimidating. Standing across from them was Spain, the reigning European champion and one of the favorites to win the entire tournament. Spain arrived with a squad filled with elite talent. Players from Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Manchester City formed the backbone of a team many believed would cruise through the group stage. Cape Verde were expected to survive for as long as possible before eventually being overwhelmed. Instead, they frustrated Spain for 90 minutes. Their veteran goalkeeper produced save after save. Their defenders threw themselves into challenges, and their organization never wavered. When the final whistle blew, the scoreboard read 0-0. Spain had been held by a nation making its World Cup debut. Many dismissed it as a fluke. Perhaps Spain were rusty. Perhaps nerves played a role. Surely normal service would resume in the next match. Then came Uruguay, a nation with 2 World Cup titles. A country whose football history stretches back nearly a century. A team packed with players competing for some of Europe's biggest clubs. This was supposed to be where reality returned. Instead, Cape Verde delivered something even more remarkable. Rather than defending desperately and hoping to survive, they attacked with courage. 20 minutes into the match, Kevin Pina stepped up to take a free kick. What happened next stunned everyone inside the stadium. His strike flew past the goalkeeper and into the net. Cape Verde had scored their first ever World Cup goal, and they were leading Uruguay. The moment felt surreal. In the stands, family members who had sacrificed everything just to witness this journey watched in disbelief. On the touchline, Cape Verde's coach stood toe-to-toe with one of football's tactical masters. Eventually, Uruguay responded. Their quality began to show, and they fought back to take a 2-1 lead. At that point, the football world expected the fairy tale to end, but Cape Verde had no interest in playing their assigned role. A defensive mistake gifted them another opportunity, and they seized it. The equalizer sparked wild celebrations. Players danced. Fans erupted. Meanwhile, the Uruguayan bench stared on in shock. The match finished level. For Uruguay, it felt like a defeat. For Cape Verde, it felt like history. Suddenly, this tiny nation from a chain of islands in the Atlantic Ocean was threatening to reach the knockout stages of a World Cup they had never previously attended. And they are not alone. Thousands of miles away, another underdog has created its own unlikely chapter. Curacao entered the tournament carrying the distinction of being the smallest nation by population ever to qualify. For a World Cup with only around 156,000 residents, they are smaller than many cities around the globe. Their tournament began in disastrous fashion. Germany crushed them 7-1. For critics of the expanded format, it appeared to be the perfect example. This was exactly what they had predicted. The smaller teams did not belong. The tournament was being diluted. The expansion had gone too far, but football has a habit of making fools out of certainty. Just 6 days later, Curaçao faced Ecuador. Few gave them any chance. Yet for 90 minutes, they fought with extraordinary determination. Their goalkeeper, Eloy Room, produced one of the greatest individual performances in World Cup history. Time and again, Ecuador attacked. Time and again, Room denied them. By the final whistle, he had recorded 15 saves. The match ended scoreless. Nation that had been humiliated in its opening game had suddenly earned a precious point against a vastly superior opponent. The scenes afterward were emotional. Players celebrated as though they had won a trophy. Their veteran coach was overcome with tears. The achievement represented far more than a result, it represented belief. What makes these stories fascinating is that they are completely different. Cape Verde have looked fearless, competitive, and capable of challenging established powers on equal terms. Curaçao suffered a crushing defeat, yet found the resilience to rise from it and fight back. Different paths, same conclusion. The Underdogs are no longer participating merely to make up the numbers. They are changing the tournament, and FIFA's expanded format is helping them do it. The new structure offers more opportunities than ever before. Teams no longer need to finish first or second in every case. Strong performances, valuable draws, and moments of brilliance can keep dreams alive longer than ever. One upset result can change everything. One heroic defensive display can transform a nation's future. The very system FIFA created to maximize revenue has inadvertently created the perfect environment for giant killing stories. And now some of football's traditional powers are feeling the consequences. Several heavily favored nations find themselves under pressure. Teams expected to advance comfortably are suddenly facing elimination. Meanwhile, countries that many viewers had never considered serious contenders are climbing the standings and dreaming of the impossible. That is the true twist of this World Cup. The expanded tournament did not fail, it worked, just not in the way many expected. Instead of simply creating more matches for football's elite, it opened the door for football's forgotten nations. It gave smaller countries a platform to challenge the established order. It created opportunities for players who spent their entire lives dreaming of moments nobody thought they would ever experience. And history reminds us why these moments matter. The World Cup has always belonged to the Giants in the end. Only a handful of nations have ever lifted the trophy. Very few have even reached the final, but the tournament's soul has never been about predictability. It lives in the unexpected. It lives in Costa Rica, shocking former champions in 2014. It lives in Morocco's unforgettable run to the semifinals in 2022. It lives in South Korea, Croatia, and every nation that dared to challenge football's hierarchy and succeeded. Those stories are the reason millions watch. They remind us that football is not played on spreadsheets, television contracts, or marketing projections. It is played on grass, and once the whistle blows, reputation means nothing. That is why Cape Verde matters. That is why Curaçao matters. These nations were supposed to arrive, lose, and leave. Instead, they have become symbols of everything people love about the World Cup. Every point they earn sends a message. Every upset they create forces the football world to reconsider its assumptions. Every step they take forward pushes a bigger, richer, and more powerful nation closer to the exit door. FIFA expanded the tournament hoping to create more value. What they accidentally created was something even better, a stage where the little guys can fight back. Competition increasingly driven by money, business, and commercial interests that may be the most beautiful outcome of all. This version is optimized for YouTube documentary style narration and runs roughly 400 plus words.